Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Well, season 2021 is over for the West Coast Eagles, so it's very much a take stock, lay of the land type Nest podcast today, albeit with a couple of high points that emerged overnight, which we can start the podcast on. Nest family, thanks so much for all your feedback. Thanks so much for listening all season. Still got many episodes to come before we sign off for the year. Don't worry about that. But this does feel like a poignant moment in the season, Drew Jones. Just like that, the campaign is over. No finals football. Hard to believe.
Yeah, it feels weird, doesn't it? Because we were expecting so much from the season for it to be over at this point. And I guess we're pretty blessed as West Coast fans to go into most finals campaigns, at least with a glimmer of hope that a flag potentially is on the table. So first time we've missed the finals since 2014. Worst season in terms of wins. Since 2013, and then our lowest percentage, Garby, since we won the Wooden Spoon in 2010. So I think overall we could say it's a failed season, pretty disappointing.
Oh, yeah.
And we just didn't hit the heights consistently enough that we thought we would. And there's almost probably no game for the year where we played 4 quarters, which is astounding, really. But that was just the way it was. There were so many ebbs and flows within games, and unfortunately, nowhere near good enough in season 2021. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like we've had a few of these podcasts, haven't we? Like we've said all that really we can say about where West Coast are at, but we'll try and put a bow on it today.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've summed up where the season sits amongst our most disappointing. We've analysed all the problems ad nauseum. I'm not sure today's podcast will be that all-encompassing. I think people want to look forward now. But we'll sum up things. We've got the Nest medal to finalise. Thanks for all your votes. We're going to have a look at our overachiever, underachiever of the year and our emerging talent. Look at a couple of trade options. Look at who we might cut and get to a lot of your questions. And a lot of your questions have that entailed. And a lot of them are looking forward. People are like, all right, we know the season sucked. We know why the problems exist. How do we get over them? How do we move forward now? That's what Eagles fans want to know. So we'll have a look at that. And it's time to start looking towards season 2022 now, off-field, on-field, and the rest. Before we do all that, though, Drew, and we'll look at the Brisbane game too, which was encouraging in some ways, but ultimately probably summed up our season. Some great moments overnight, which were unexpected for me. And that was the Hall of Fame inductions of Robbie Wiley and then the great Christopher Judd. I didn't pay much attention at all. I don't know if you did, to the speculation around who might be a Hall of Famer. So I was watching it last night, and when Juddy popped up, my face just lit up. Like, how good is this? This is such a treat, such a reward to sit back now and just bask in the glory of what Chris Judd was for the West Coast Eagles. That was probably the most enjoyable 10 minutes of the season, watching his highlights package and his interview with Jared Waitley.
Yeah, it was awesome, wasn't it? And I just think the longer it's gone along, and I guess with Juddy doing media stuff, and then he's sort of had a failed career post-football at Carlton in terms of being a football director, etc. It's probably taken some of the shine off his playing career at West Coast. But then watching those highlights, it took me right back to the amazing feeling that you got as a West Coast fan watching Chris Judd, because, you know, he was a high draft pick and there was a lot of expectation around what he could be. But within 3 or 4 games, you realised that this guy was absolutely special. And then his ascension, you know, from not playing his first game not selected in that derby, playing for East Perth, to being a Brownlow medalist a couple of years later and clearly the best gap player in the competition. It was just so fun to be a part of. He was a reason to go to the football. And if someone went live to an Eagles game, you were like, oh, how was Juddy? Like, what was he like? It was just such a fond memory as an Eagles fan of watching him develop. And obviously sad that he left. But clearly his Eagles years were his best years. He could have probably won a couple of Brownlows and probably we should have won a couple of flags with him. Sensational player. And the highlights really did do him justice. They did a great job with it. And just to see him breaking away from packs, hitting Ashley Hansen on the lead a lot, but his strength and power and pace, just an unbelievable combination. What a player.
Yeah, I mean, in recent times, I've thought, geez, is Dusty the best player I've ever seen? 3 Norm Smiths, that's pretty remarkable. And maybe he is. But before the Dusty exploits of the last few years, I always had Juddy as the best player I've ever seen. And maybe I didn't watch as much of Carey week on week, Gary Ablett Sr., obviously players before we didn't get to see. Gary Ablett Jr. right up there. But Judd's the best player I've seen. Dusty right there with him. It's a tough call between them. But those Eagles years, I've never been blown away by a player as much. And it was just extraordinary what he was able to do. And I'll never forget, I think I told the story before, maybe in one of our earlier episodes, but Judd Mania in Perth when he burst on the scene was something else. There was so much intrigue around him. I remember one night at Steve's, the famous pub in Perth, when the Eagles were there and he rocked up. He would have been 18 years of age, the era before smartphones and taking selfies. And there would have been 20 to 30 people gathered around him as he walked in the bar, all just saying, Juddy, hey, Juddy, just wanting to say hello to him, just chat to him and be around him. And he got so spooked, he actually left. He walked straight out. And that was the aura around him at the time in Perth. And then he just kept delivering on that more and more week after week and improving more and more as the seasons went on until his groins gave way late in 2007. It was just an awesome ride as an Eagles fan. And last night we got to revel in that again. That was the brilliance of it. We got to enjoy it once more.
Yeah, it's the best. Was it 6 seasons he played for West Coast? That's the best 6-year bracket of West Coast football that an individual has produced. He's probably not going to go down as our best player of all time because he doesn't have the longevity. But in terms of bang for buck for what we got from him, that's as good as it gets. It's
interesting though because if you have Matera or Djakovic or Cousins or Cox above him because of longevity, fair enough. You can't argue with that. But if you're still asking me the best Eagle of all time, I'm still giving you Chris Judd.
Okay, that's
Matera is the only one who can match him on talent, as brilliant as Kerr and Cousins and Cox and all of them were. Djakovic. Matera is the only one that I think matches him with talent, but I'm still going Judd. He's still, for me, the best Eagle of all time.
So if you had a one-off game, just 120 minutes of footy, you'd pick Judd for that game. Yeah,
definitely. And I still think on the body, the longevity, maybe Matera edges ahead. Maybe because I don't know, I was a little bit older, living through Judd as much as I was appreciating Matera. Maybe that's a bit of bias in that sense, but I still think he's the best. He's the best player that's ever put on the Guernsey, talent-wise. That I have no doubt about, pound for pound. I'd still have him number one, but I would appreciate if others had other players because of longevity.
Right, so he is your number one Eagle. Have we discussed this before?
Yeah, he would be my number one Eagle of all time.
Yeah, see, I've got Peter Matera.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But then maybe I'm biased because he was my favourite player when I was growing up. So, everyone's biased, but that's the whole point. It's interesting, isn't it? I reckon our top, you would probably say our top 3, 4, or 5 are probably the same. It's just a question of what order you want to put it in. But and all of them, all the choices that you're making, there's almost always a caveat. It's like, well, Ben Cousins, where does he rank? Do you take into account how it ended and how it's going now? But Ben Cousins' West Coast career, he was one of us. He was the guy you wanted to be. You wanted to be Ben Cousins.
Let's not forget how good he was when we were terrible, early 2000s. Yeah. Judd, Matera, Djakovic, Cousins, Cox, for me, are the 5. Yeah. They're the 5 best Eagles of all time. That's ridiculously harsh on Kerr and Kemp and McKenna and so many others. Josh Kennedy.
Yeah.
But they are my 5 still.
The pointy end of West Coast's best ever is like, there's some absolute names there. And it's hard to separate about 15 of them, I reckon, but I think those 5 stand alone.
Yeah, I would say. Robbie Wiley. So, I mean, that record of 8 best and fairest at Perth.
It's amazing.
At a time when the waffle was incredibly strong. That is just extraordinary. 8 best and fairest at a club. So he deserved his nomination. And then, he had a massive impact at the Eagles. Okay, he came in at the end of his playing days as an inaugural player. Didn't have that much of an impact then. But as an assistant coach, I mean, coaching structures were very different late 80s, early 90s. There wasn't the 14 line coaches that you've got now. It was the head coach and a couple assistants. And Robbie Wiley was like right-hand man for Mick Malthouse. The person he lent on, massive impact on that playing group, 92, 94, and all the way through to the Worsfold era. And you heard Chris Judd mention him last night. Robbie Wiley took me under his wing.
Yeah.
So delighted that he got in as well from a West Coast point of view.
His record is insane. Like, it's probably hard for us to even do it justice because we weren't alive, or we were very young in your case. But so he won best and fairest at Perth in 1974, and then 75, 76, 77, 78. At that point, he then left and went to the VFL and played for Richmond, played 95 games for the Tigers. He then comes back and he just picks up where he left off. Best and fairest, best and fairest, best and fairest. And then he plays for West Coast. So basically, if he pulled on a Perth Guernsey, he won their best and fairest. Won a couple of premierships. He won a premiership in the VFL. Leading goal kicker, not as a mainstay hulking full forward, which was a great effort. So he's all Australian in 1986 playing for Richmond. So it's an absolutely sensational career. Hall of Fame in WA 17 years ago. Like, he was football royalty a long time ago, nearly 2 decades ago. And then, clearly, like, his DNA is etched in the fabric of West Coast in a time where the club was establishing themselves in a national competition as an outsider. So he's going to go down, maybe not with the average fan, but with the diehards and with people involved with West Coast, he'll go down as one of the most important people in the club's history.
Yeah, I love that players like that get recognition from WA, South Australia, Tasmania, etc. Because we get so wrapped up in VFL/AFL. A lot of these guys didn't have the opportunity to play their best football on that stage. Yeah. And they deserve the credit for what they did in their leagues, which were very strong. The Hall of Fame does that really well. And I love that. A man connected to the Eagles was able to get that recognition last night, and Robbie Wiley, along with so many others. So well done to him. The Brizzy game, Drewy. So encouraging/frustrating. That's how I'd sum it up because, we saw, again, the change of style, playing a more aggressive attacking game plan, taking it up to a team that needed to push for a top 4 spot with so much to play for when we had so many players out. That was great, but then so frustrating because you sat there going, why the hell did we not do this on more occasions throughout the season?
Well, that was the overwhelming emotion that I had probably for 3/4 of the game. I was like, what the hell are we doing? Like, why are we playing so well now? Like, where has all this spirit been? And I was like, geez, look at our outs. Like, that was a pretty weak team on paper against a pretty rampaging Brisbane team. And obviously they got away from us for a little while in the second quarter, but we were kind of able to stem that momentum. Like, we kept them in check to an extent. And then when West Coast are playing their current style, which clearly is on a hiding to nothing, but when they're playing their current style well, their entries matter. And so we were taking opportunities when we went forward, which was really pleasing. Helps when you've got Nick Nat winning 1 million clearances and hit outs and, doing everything.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and then you get Shuey and Yo both playing almost both of their best games of the season. So that makes a massive difference. But yeah, and so I don't know about you. I was in hotel quarantine and it was an amazing day of footy, wasn't it? Like, I was pretty pumped up for the game. And And I started to get really invested. And I just haven't been invested in a West Coast game quite as much as I was on Sunday, even though the season was basically over, on Saturday, because we were playing well. I wanted us to win. I wanted to get some reward for the effort of the players. So a couple of absolutely disgusting umpiring decisions went against us. And there was like a string of like 4 minutes where we got Brisbane players holding the ball like 5 times and not one was given. And I was tearing my hair out. I was throwing things around the room. Like I was invested and just really wanted to like fuck Brisbane over and get the Bulldogs into the top 4. That was my emotion, especially after Berry did that big flop. So it was nice to be invested in that way in a game.
I'm laughing because I went into the game with this whole, in my mind, I don't care. Like, we're going to get done. I think I had a couple of multis with Brisbane to win. Like, you know, we're just not going to win this game. I hope I don't get embarrassed, but like just trying to apply that I don't care mentality. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Season's over. And then as soon as you get into the game and start well, that all goes out the window. And it's like every other game, and I'm swearing and I'm smacking the couch, and I couldn't give a toss about my multi-bets. I just want the Eagles to win.
Yeah.
It's funny how it changes like that.
When Cripps kicked that second goal at the start of the fourth quarter, I was like,
I'm like, come on.
This is happening.
I made a bad decision, and I'm like, my neighbours can hear me saying the most disgraceful words in the English language. It's just, you know, once the game starts, you can't help where your heart lies. You just want to see your team win. It doesn't matter what money you've got on it. And I don't bet on the Eagles against the Eagles ever. But this is one week where it's like, you know, might as well. We got no chance. And in the end, we did lose convincingly. But it's just funny how it works when you're a fan. That's all you care about is your team. And it shows how much you do love them, which was actually kind of refreshing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The emotions were peaking again. Like I just moved rooms to like a bigger hotel room, which was like a massive relief. But I'd moved to basically right where a COVID officer would sit, like literally right outside the door, about a metre from where I would open the door. And like they must have been thinking, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Because I'm yelling, like I think I yelled out like "fuck you, Jared Berry," like
worse than that.
Yeah, I was like, I think I yelled out like, "How the fuck did he get rid of it?" like 5 or 6 times. Like, you know, like I was just that. It was like I was at the game. And so anyway, that was nice. And then that probably made me a little bit sad that now the season's over. But you know, hopefully
that was part of it for me as well. It's the last game. We're not going to see the Eagles next week. Like I'm just putting everything into it as a fan as well. I'm sure all the other supporters listening were the same.
Oh, what'd you say when Dom Sheed was in the midfield twisting and turning with no one around him, with like 5 West Coast players open, and then just gets caught holding the ball?
It was just like, you just got to be kidding, right? Like we had all this momentum. What are you doing? We've clearly got guys forward. All right, they might be set up well defensively. Just fucking kick the thing. Just kick it.
God.
We're playing well. They're on the back foot. What are we turning around in circles for? And then they go forward and kick a goal, and you just think, well, all right. I mean, any slim hope we had of winning is gone now. So that sucked.
Yeah, so, we lost by 38 points in the end, but at one stage it got back to a couple of points in the last quarter. So we were in the game. So that was good to watch. And, you know, it was an exciting finish. You know, well done, Brisbane, for getting themselves into the top 4. So here's a question, just before we get to the votes, because obviously Nick Nat has got 5 from both of us.
Yeah.
Is that his best ever game? Like, has he ever played I think he's had more influential moments, and he's had probably games that he's probably tilted our way and helped us win. But on a pure statistical breakdown, has he ever had a more dominant performance?
Well, I'm looking up to see if it was his highest possession game ever.
I think it's second.
It might have been. Yeah, his highest possession game ever is against Carlton in 2012. And he's had 2, and there's one in 2011 where he had 24 possessions. His equal second highest possession game in his career. 25 is his best, and he's had 2 hauls of 24, and he had 24 touches. So that sums up where he sits in that regard.
Yeah, it was his most.
Right. I mean,
It's
he's
his
probably
most
had more
hit
influential
outs.
games or had
Yeah.
bigger games. Yep. Yeah, so it'd be up there. It'd be up there. He's probably had bigger performances in games that mattered more. So maybe you take that into the equation. But he was unbelievable, and it just rubber stamped why he should be in the All-Australian team. And that's the discussion I wanted to get onto. So he's our only nominee, as we expected. It's going to be really interesting tomorrow when the team is announced. Now, I'd have nothing against Max Gawn being the number one ruck. I wouldn't. I would have nothing against Nick Nat being the number one ruck. I think you could make a case either way. I think both should be in, because people will say, well, you don't play two rucks. The team is not playing anyone, right? They're not playing anyone. So you can pick two rucks, because if two of them are such standouts, you can put one on the bench. That is okay. It can work that way. Not saying that's the way it'll go, but people who go, oh, I had a mate, he did his All-Australian Sean Darcy on the bench. I said, excuse me? He goes, well, I want Darcy to go forward. He's a better option forward. I said, you realise the team's not playing against anyone, mate.
There's no
all
world team.
Forward. Like, are you serious? We're not going out next week to play Ireland.
They'd be picking it. If you're
going
going by that logic, you're picking a tagger and you need a defensive forward, and there's no balance. They pick 14 midfielders in the team. Yeah. Anyway, I just think
you might have been doing it to wind. You might have been doing it to wind me up. My mates try and wind me up and Nick Nat all the time. But I'm picking both of them. Whoever starts, whoever's on the bench, I'm not bothered. And I think that's the way it should go based on output over the course of the season.
I just think, how can they sit down at the table when they have their discussion or over Zoom and look at the statistics as well as the eye test? You cannot deny, he's been the number one ranked player according to champion data for almost the whole season. Him and Bontempelli were swapping back and forth. Bont's now dropped down the list a little bit. Nick Nat, if you look at his stats in terms of ruck, which you put up on the Twitter, he's number one in almost everything.
Yeah.
But you just got to watch him. Just watch Nick Nat Nui play, and there's no way that he can't be in the team. Like Jason Dunstall said, I'd love to see Darcy in the team.
Yeah, I saw
that.
What
are you talking about? Have you watched West Coast once? I love Jason Dunstall. Get on with him like a house on fire, and I think he's a great analyst. But if he's saying that Darcy should be in the team, then he hasn't watched West Coast.
Yeah, he did say, I'd like to see Darcy rewarded for a great season.
But that's not, I'm sorry, that's not how it works.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, and he said he only wants one ruck. I think they both should be in. On the champion data side of things, they can be misleading at times. They did their team of the year. They had Gaffey on the wing. I'm sorry. Sometimes it's a little bit too statistically based.
Yeah.
But with Nick Nat, they are key ruck indicators. Hit outs to advantage, clearances. They're important things when you analyse a ruckman. Hit outs to advantage that means a lot. That is your number one job as a ruckman, and he smashes it. But Gawn's up there too, and Gawn does a lot around the ground, and Gawn kicks more goals, and you saw what he did to help Melbourne clinch top spot on the weekend. So I would have no umbrage about it if Gawn's number one, as long as Nick Nat's on the bench. I think to leave any of them out, I think would be completely unfair.
I think they both had sensational seasons, and they're both generational ruckmen. So why wouldn't you pick both?
Yeah.
There's guys on that. There's guys who it's going to be that or a midfielder. So it's either the second best ruckman or the 13th best midfielder getting picked in the team. Come on. Zach Merritt or whoever it's going to be. Give me a spell.
Can you imagine for a second if Nick Nat is first ruck and Gawn doesn't make it?
I'll be right.
There will be.
Twitter will break. Imagine, Melbourne fans, I get, they've been through tough times. So they're pretty sensitive. They'll fucking lose it.
I mean, Glenn Jakovich would have to go into hiding for years.
Yeah, and Jared Healy, because you know that it's Jared and Jacko, and that's it.
Hopefully both make it. It would be unfair if one misses out.
Max
watch for that tomorrow. That'll be interesting.
He's a great story, Max Gawn.
Yeah.
He's done his ACL twice. So it could be the two guys in the All-Australian team who've done 4 ACLs between them, and literally the most important part of their armory is their knee. They need to jump. Anyway, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, and no surprise there were no other players nominated. The only player who I think had a chance, I mean, I think Tommy Barrass early gave it a bit of a crack. Tim Kelly at one stage would have been in the mix. By the end of the season, there's no one else who got close to a nomination other than Nick Nat from the West Coast Eagles. So there was no surprise there.
If you did an All-Australian team after round 6, after maybe we beat Port or something, I might have, Darling and Barrass, I reckon, were almost in that team. But, clearly they were way out of it by the end.
So let's do our votes from the Brizzy game, and then we can finalise the Nest Medal for the first time ever in season 2021, the inaugural award. It's very prestigious. So give us your 5-1, Drew. Obviously, we both went Nick Nat 5. Give us the rest from you.
Yeah, so I went Shuey 4. I just love the drive that he gave us, and maybe it's just because we haven't seen enough of him, but it seemed like a standout game from him. And Yo's just been awesome, full stop, basically, since he's come back. So I gave Yo 3, but it was interchangeable between those two. And Nick, Yo, and Shuey, to see them all playing well at the same time, like that was why we were in the game. They were massive for us. And then I gave Witherden 2. I think his last few weeks have been really good since he's come back into the team.
Yeah.
I think there's promising signs there. I'm sure that he would have felt like he had a bit to prove playing against Brisbane, and that showed. And if he can play with that chip on his shoulder all the time, that would be really great for us. I tossed up between Cripps and Darling for the 1. I gave it to Jamie, but I think Darling was clearly injured for a portion of the game, and to finish with 3 goals was a great effort.
Yeah, he played well. Yeah, Nick 5 for me. I went Shuey 4. Shuey and Yo I thought were very even. Only reason I gave Shuey the 4 was I thought Yo just gave away a couple of unnecessary free kicks. Like, we love his aggression. Yep. We love what he does, the heart. A couple of times I went, listen, you've done it a bit too much now. Like, just tone it down a bit, slightly overzealous. It's actually hurting us a touch. So that was probably the swaying factor. And Luke was maybe a little bit cleaner. So I went Luke 4, Yoey 3, Witherden 2 as well. Just loving what he's giving us at the moment. We're trying to change the game plan, and he's the best player to help us do that with his kicking. So really excited for what he can bring next season. And I gave 1 to Liam Ryan. I agree. Darling was a big shout for the 1, but I gave it to Liam Ryan. I thought his energy and his 3 goals had a big impact on us staying in the game and making us feel excited. So, yeah, I love what he brought. So you've done the 5-1, Drewy, and then I can update the Nest Medal leaderboard and give you the final standings. Yeah,
so 2 people didn't give Nick 5. I just thought for sure this was going to be the time where we got, 5s all round. So Nick got 92, clearly by far and away the top vote getter. And then Yo 65, Shuey 60, so 4 to Yo, 3 to Shuey, then Witherden was clearly 4th. Plenty of votes, yeah. And then Darling got the 1 with 17, just over Cripps, and then Rotham, Gaff, Vardy, West, and Ryan all got votes as well.
Well done to everyone for submitting so many. Okay, the final Nest Medal leaderboard. We did say last week that position 3 was open. There was a spot there on the podium. So after the 5-1 this week, no surprise, Nick Natanui wins it by a huge margin on 55 votes. Tim Kelly, second in the Nest Medal on 31 votes. Third on the Nest Medal for season 2021 is Jack Darling on 24.
There you go.
Then we've got Jack Redden and Elliot Yo both on 22. Votes per game, Elliot Yo would be just behind Natanui. Hasn't he stormed home, only playing pretty much the second half of the season? He came back the week before the bye, and he finished on 22 votes, equal 4th with Jack Redden. Awesome second half of the season. Tom Barrass, 21. Dom Sheed, 21. Andrew Gaff, 21. Then a big drop to Jeremy McGovern on 14. Oscar Allen on 13, who I reckon was leading the medal after round 7 or 8 on 13 votes, and did not poll another vote, Drewy, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, our fortunes clearly hinge on Oscar, because when he was up, we were going really well. Yeah, he looked tired and a little bit injured, really, the second half of the season, didn't he? He did well to battle through.
That's disappointing. Shannon Hearn finished level with him on 13. Brad Shepherd, 8. Jamie Cripps, 8. Luke Shuey, 8. Alex Witherden, 7. Jack Petrocelli on 7. Josh Kennedy on 6. Liam Duggan on 4. We expected a lot more from him this season, but he missed a lot of footy with injury. Brendan Archie, 4 from his game against the Hawks. Liam Ryan, 4. Again, one of our key players, missed a lot of footy through injury, but geez, you'd want a lot more from him. Zach Langdon, 3. Jake Waterman, 2. Jared Brander, 2. And Josh Rotham, 1. There you go. That is your final leaderboard. We'll put the full votes up on Twitter so you can have a look at them as well and see the final leaderboard and what you liked or what you didn't. But I've loved the Nest Medal this season, Drew. I think it's been a great addition to the podcast. A lot of fun and a great way to keep everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the big plus, is being able to involve everyone. Like, it's not our medal. Like, it's everyone's. You know, like, they're the votes according to West Coast fans. So if we're taking the temperature of the Eagles fan base, that's how they view the season. So, yeah, I guess if you play the season out in full with everyone playing, you know, full games, then Yo's probably almost our second best player of the year, isn't he? He was awesome once he came back in. Yeah, well, I mean, customary would be to try and get the winner on the podcast, Garby. So let's start making some calls and getting Nick Nat on the pod. Yeah. Geez, that'd be a great effort.
Let's try. It'll be a bit of fun.
Yeah,
so we'll give it a crack.
For sure.
We'll give it a crack.
So I guess we should do a bit of a look back at the season. We've got some categories, Garby, which you've come up with. What are they?
So let's do our overachiever of the season, our underachiever of the season, our emerging talents of the campaign. 3 categories. Let's not dwell on it for too long, but we can list some players and give a nominee for each category: overachiever, underachiever, emerging talent. And then we'll get into a lot of your questions, which cover so much else: trades, off-season changes, captaincy changes, coaching changes, etc. We can look at all of that stuff. So your overachiever of the year, Drew, you can give a few nominees and then your final submission.
Yeah, overachiever is an interesting one because it doesn't necessarily take into account where you sit in the overall pecking order of your performance for the season. But I thought the one that overachieved for me was Jack Redden. I thought he became almost one of our most reliable midfielders. And
yeah, nice.
The leadership that I thought that he showed, calm head in a crisis, and he got injured against against Sydney, and look what happened that game. You know, we missed him badly, and that's just one example. But I thought, when in a season where we desperately lacked consistency, I thought Redden certainly was that. So, to a point now where I'm reassessing other players because of wanting to have him in the team. So Jack Redden for me was an overachiever, and probably Luke Edwards sits there for me as an overachiever. I thought for a number 55 draft pick, he had a pretty good debut season. So, but Jack gets it for me.
Nice. I mean, yeah, Yo and Nick Nat, you can make cases. Nick Nat just way above everyone else on the list, so he overachieved, but we know how brilliant he is. Elliot Yo, when you consider how much footy he missed to play the second half of the season the way in which he did, probably overachieved on our expectations because we weren't sure how he would come back, but he was just sensational from game one. Yep, Jack Redden's on the list as well for me, and he is my submission as well. But Tommy Cole was the other one that challenged him for me. A lot of half-backs, a lot of players in that position. He played every single game. His effort never dropped. Even when we were getting smashed in some of those games, Tommy Cole was always someone who was always running, always chasing. I thought he maintained a solid level of consistency throughout the whole campaign. And I think he actually was one of the very few players who probably performed above expectations over the course of the season. So he was second for me, but Jack Redden gets my nod as well.
If you were giving like a Rowan Jones medal.
Because at the beginning of the season, we questioned whether if everyone was up and firing. What's that?
Sorry, no, you were about to make a point, which I certainly agree with, whether Jack was a best 18 or 22 player. But I was going to say, if we were giving a Rowan Jones medal, it would be Tom Cole.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. He would probably fit that mold. But Jack, we weren't sure if he would make the team if everyone was up and going at the start of the season. So for him to finish fourth in the Nest medal, equal fourth, he definitely overachieved. There'd be a fair few in this category, unfortunately, Drew. You're underachiever of the season.
Oh, yeah.
It's a long batting order.
Yeah, I'll give you the names that I think should be included. So Sheed, Gaff, Ryan, Petruccelli, McGovern, And then I would even throw Shuey in there if we're talking about injury, if that counts. For me, it's Dom Sheed. And I think that he was okay early, like playing a lot of full-time sort of inside mid minutes was good for him, and he had some decent games earlier in the season, but just it got calamitous towards the end. Like, it was bad when he had the ball, and that to me is unthinkable because he was supposed to be a reliable user with a great left foot who wins grand finals off his own boot. So yeah, it's so disappointing. And this could have been Dom Sheed's coming out party as a A-grade midfielder. Like, what an opportunity when you've got all these injuries. He was the one that stayed fit for most of the season. And if he had a breakout year, like, he could have been in contention to win a best and fairest, to be, in the All-Australian squad of 40. But he fell well short of what he should have. He was given the opportunity, and so many times AFL players have made their names when given a chance like that, and he didn't do it.
Yeah, I've got a long list. I mean, I had Brad Shepherd on the list as well. I think it's unfortunately his poorest season for a long time. Oscar Allen was on my list. Jack Petrocelli was on my list. Lots of opportunities, didn't deliver. Yeah. Massive underachiever. Jack Darling, he didn't finish top 10 in the Coleman by the end of the season, Jack Darling. For a key forward like him with his ability to play the whole season and not finish top 10, man, the players on the list above him on the Coleman, it's hard to understand. We made a couple of big calls. I think you made a call early in the year, Drewy, that we wouldn't finish outside the top 5. We wouldn't drop outside the top 5. I made a call that Jack Darling wins the Coleman. Neither got close. So we got done on that occasion. So, yeah, Jack for me. And then I've got Dom Sheed down there too, but I've given it to Andrew Gaff. I think he was our underachiever of the year. I think he's such an important player. And he just didn't look right from week one. And then when he got going, he contributed a bit more, but he never really hurt teams. And now we're in a situation where we're, thinking it might be best for all parties to trade him. So I think with the amount of footy he played and what he's done in the past, definitely his poorest season as an Eagle. I've got Andrew Gaff as my underachiever of the year. Yeah,
I thought you might. You've been leading that campaign, and I guess in terms of asking for more from Gaff. And yeah, the weekend's game was interesting, wasn't it? I think did he lay 5 tackles and have 15 disposals? A bit different, like it almost as though they saw that he had the ball too much in the derby, so they changed his role a little bit, and it probably was better for the betterment of the team. So
I feel like he had almost a run with role. Like, don't worry about getting it, just worry about watching your opponent the whole time.
Yeah, interesting, wasn't it? But until we see him round 1 next year, we just don't know whether he's fallen off a cliff or if it was a bad year. And that's the hard thing about knowing what to do with him during the off-season. Like, we'll get to this a little bit later, but he's got to be one that's a candidate that's discussed as to whether he could offer value to the team. But ultimately, if we do commit to him being an Eagle for life, you'd want to hope that we're going to get more out of him next season.
Yeah. Your emerging talent of the year, Drewy?
So I think it's actually quite hard to split our young players. I think they're all showing something, and I'm excited about what they're going to bring long term. But I don't think any one of them necessarily is streets ahead. So I've gone with Harry Edwards because I think from what I've seen from Big Harry, his ceiling to me is quite high. Just some moments when he's got the ball in his hands, he plays like someone who's not 200 centimetres. So when you combine, hopefully, what are going to be, some pretty impressive aerial skills that he'll develop and defensive nous, which he's still got some work to do, with the skills that he developed as a 190 centimetre junior, I'm really excited about what Harry's going to offer once he's going to be picked week in, week out. And, I've loved what Luke's brought to the table in terms of Foley and Edwards, I suppose. Both of them have had some really good moments during the season. Oscar Allen is our best young player. But in terms of the player who emerged this season who I really liked, I've gone with Harry Edwards.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, I've got Bailey Williams down, Connor West, Luke Foley, who showed a bit, Lukey Edwards, who looks exciting. But I think Harry Edwards is the one that really stood out, that you watched and you went, wow, the composure in a kid so young playing in a position where you are under so much pressure. That's exciting for us. And it does throw up the question, what do you do with Josh Kennedy? Because, Barassa McGovern going to be there next season. Allen, Darling, are we a little bit too tall? How does Harry Edwards get in the team regularly if McGovern and Barassa are playing? Can you play all three down back? Maybe. Maybe if Josh goes, then you throw Gov up forward and you play him in a pinch hitting role up there, and you play Barassa and Harry Edwards down back. Oscar, Darling, and you let McGovern be your swing man. Second ruck, up forward, can go down back if he wants. Because I think we need to pin Oscar down in a position. We can't keep throwing him all over the field. It's unfair on a kid that young. McGovern's got the experience, and I think he can do it and feel comfortable around the ground. I wouldn't mind seeing that happen. So I wonder if that might come into the thinking when they consider what to do with Josh Kennedy moving forward. As much as I'd love him to stay, but I think Harry Edwards is our best emerging talent as well.
It's a bloody precarious situation that we're in, and it's such a hard decision to make, because you've got one of the all-time greats of the footy club, who we can all see him, like, if he's on the list, you pick him when he's fit, and it's holding back the way that we structure up the team, or potentially some young guys that need to get in. And it almost always happens, doesn't it? Like, it's hard. But these conversations, luckily, say for Collingwood, they're not happening with Pendlebury. Like, you just pick Pendles and you can play him at half forward, half back, or in the midfield. Yeah. But for us, Josh Kennedy has to play as a key forward, and we've got good young key position players that need to play footy. So, yeah, it does make it difficult for us. I guess this is another thing that we're going to discuss. So we put the call out for questions, comments from everyone on social media, and there's a lot to discuss, I think, isn't there?
There are. Have you got some down there to kick us off? Do you want me to start?
No, I've got some for you.
Okay. Beautiful.
Well, I've got the feed up. So,
all right, you go for them then.
So Alex Paul, loyal listener for us, he says West Coast historically performs best when expectations are low. Why is this the case, and can that continue next year? And then he also says historically we're not massive players at the trade table, and if this continues, and this is the group that we're committed to, how do we improve next year? Yeah,
I think it's more with this group that they play better when they're under the gun. I think if through the 90s, we were touted to be the big team and win, and we did. The worst forward years with the super midfield, we were touted to challenge, and we did. It's only this current group that seems to respond better when we're under the pump. I don't know what it is about this group. Maybe they get too comfortable when everyone's talking them up, and they believe their own hype a little bit. That's my only answer I can give. I think there is something in that. Good contracts, been around for a while, been to the summit. Is the hunger there? All relevant answers that we provided all season. I just wonder if this group gets a bit too comfortable and believes their own hype too much, because this is a group that has existed in that space where when we've talked them up, they've fallen underneath that expectation. But when people have written them off, they've risen against it.
Yeah, it takes a special group to continue to go to the well and keep winning flags. And that's why you don't see it too often. And you look at the coaches of the teams that have done it recently, like it's Lee Matthews and Alistair Clarkson, right? They're two of the greatest coaches of all time. So, yes, and then they're being driven by Luke Hodges and Michael Vosses, who are all-time great players. So, it is hard to continue to produce your absolute best when even if it's 1%, in terms of the motivation and the extra work that you're doing that's required. I'm watching The Last Dance again at the moment, and they talk about they lost to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 consecutive seasons. They didn't have a holiday after that second one. They all got back to the gym. They worked out, like MJ put on 15 pounds to be strong enough to go up against the Pistons, and then they swept them the next time around. So that's what it takes. It's to be the best, and to continue to improve. Like, you have to be adding layers of of commitment, not stripping them back. So, yeah, and that's just reality. So, yeah, West Coast will have something to prove next season, and that'll probably work in their favour. We get a better draw because we finish lower down the ladder, and we have to change things. That just naturally creates, puts people on edge. Things are being changed. Things are being shaken up. So I think that works in West Coast's favour. And I've said this a number of times. West Coast are committed to this group. We're committed to being in the premiership window. We've got our core group of players on long contracts who are, etched in the club's history and folklore because they won a flag. So, yes, like the team that rolls out round one next season is going to look pretty similar to the team that played most of this season. So it's just a question of moving around a few pawns, and obviously, if you can inject some youth, then that's great. But the game plan and the attitude has to change.
Yeah, I think we have been reasonably active at the trade table recently. I mean, prior to 2000, we weren't at all. But I think in the last few years, we've made some moves. Tim Kelly, Tyson Stengline, Daniel Chick, Alex Witherden last year. There have been a number of others. So we're not a big trading team, but I think we're solid. And I can see us making a move or two. I really can. I can see us putting up a couple of the older players. I think Adam Simpson knows he needs to shake things up mentally as much as structurally on the park. So, yeah, I can see an Andrew Gaff being presented to other clubs potentially. Jackson Nelson I've got down on the list. I think Jackson Nelson will be offered around. I'm not saying going to get a lot for him, but can you move off a 20-year-old? We might be on a okay contracts for a third or fourth round pick and just bring in another kid who might be able to step in. Errol Goulden went pick 32. You can find gems in the draft who can come in straight away. Doesn't always happen, but you can. I wonder if that's a player that they might look to move on. Not that quick, get some more pace in somehow. Jared Brander's a big one, Drewy. So I'd like to see us stick with Brander if he's committed. If he's committed to living in WA and playing for the Eagles, stick with him. If he is unsure about it, and that's why maybe his effort and his output has been mixed, then you might as well offer him up for a trade and say, you've been here long enough. If your commitment's not there now, when's it going to be? We're going to look at options for you.
All right. Well, we did discuss before the podcast, we were going to suggest a trade each. So that's where the conversation's gone. So we may as well do it now. So, so you've mentioned Brander. So he hasn't re-signed. There's been whispers about him. The fact that he hasn't been playing, that raised a few alarm bells for me. Like, I just wondered, is there something going on behind the scenes we don't know about? Like, because it seemed as though after having a pretty promising sort of first half of the season, obviously injury played a role, but why wouldn't you just get him in towards the back end of the season? The fact that he then was he a late inclusion for the Brisbane game? Yeah, so that sort of put paid to the theory a little bit. But to me, if you could get picked 30-ish for Brander and he wants to or is, fairly open to moving, then I think that's not a bad move. And then my theory on this, Garby, is let's say Brander goes, and then one of, if a Petruccelli decides he wants to leave, or West Coast get an offer of around pick 35 for him, or if Jake Waterman tells the club, I've had enough, I want to go play for Essendon with my brother, you can get a decent pick for him. And then you stockpile those picks, and then the move for me is to try and move up the draft. So package together 3 second-round picks and get from 10 to 5 or 10 to 4 or however you do it. Because if we are going to try and win a flag the next couple of years again, because we've got Nick Nat and we've got Shuey and we've got McGovern, this is our chance to get a high pick. So, pick 10's great.
That's
But pick 4 or pick 5 or something, that's much better.
Yeah. For me on Brander, as I said, it's about analysing where he's at. I think if you can see commitment in him, then keep persisting, because I think he is a unique player and that can be special for us. But it's time now to seriously, black or white, what is it? Where are you at? And if you're not 100%, well, then we're moving you on and see what we can get. Gaff's the big one, which we've discussed. I'd be happy with us trading Gaff to, say, North Melbourne, who might want some experience in the midfield. He might not be happy going there, Gaff, because they're not going to challenge for a flag. But, they're a club that might be interested. Maybe a Richmond, who might want to go again and have lost a little bit of experience and need a bit more depth in midfield for them to have another crack at it. Maybe he fits there. and then they move a pick on to Geelong and we get Jordan Clark. That's the kind of trade I'm looking at. Gaff to a team, they move on a pick to the Cats, and Jordan Clark comes to the Eagles. I'd be very happy with that.
Jordan Clark to me just makes so much sense. Like, he's exactly the age profile that we want. Like, yes, it's great to have an 18-year-old, but Jordan Clark's there. He's a bit further into his development, and we kind of know what he's going to bring us and give us, and we hope that we can get more out of it. You know, what we saw in his first season was just so promising when Geelong used him off half-back and a little bit off the wing. I just think he will just come straight into our team, and rather than having to wait for a first-round pick to develop, you just get a first-round pick who's ready to come into the side. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just a question of making it happen.
Yeah. And then, there's swapping of late picks and all that to even things up, of course. But
yep, it's fine.
I think we should be looking into moving Gaffey on. I think it works for all three parties, the player, another club, and us potentially. And if he stays, great, because maybe it was just an off-season and he can get his body right, as we discussed, and contribute again. But I think it's definitely worth entertaining in the off-season.
So Lee asks, and this ties in pretty well, who are your untouchables? So who wouldn't you trade from West Coast? I've got some here if you need a moment to think about it.
No, I've got them. So the untouchables for me are Liam Ryan, Elliot Yeo, Nick Natanui, Tim Kelly, Oscar Allen, Luke Shuey, still Jeremy McGovern, still Shannon Hearn for what he means to the club, still Jack Darling. You don't trade all-time key position forwards. And I love Tommy Cole, so I put him in there, even though he's probably not in that category. Those are the players that are untouchables. Tom Barrass as well.
I like that.
Tom Barrass as well. The rest you could probably entertain.
I haven't got as many untouchables, but there are some players who just aren't movable. So I haven't got him. Like, I don't see Jeremy McGovern as a movable player because he's on such a high salary. Like, so I don't see that happening.
Well, that's what I mean as well when I list some of those players.
Yeah. So untouchable for me is Yeo. You would not consider a trade for Yeo because, like, we're about to start getting the best of him again. So it would be ridiculous to trade him. Liam Ryan, because he's a genuine game changer. And again, I'm hoping we get an uptick from his output next season. Nick Nat's untouchable for what he's a talisman of our club and he's, in our opinion, the best ruckman in the competition. Oscar Allen is our future captain and hopefully a future All-Australian and Coleman medalist, and holding that cup up at some stage. And then we've invested so much in Tim Kelly. Obviously no one's ever going to ask the question, but he's certainly untouchable. And then in terms of, like, if someone offered us a first-round pick for Tom Barrass, you wouldn't do that? If Fremantle said, "Yeah, we've got too many injury-prone key backs, we'll give you Griffin Logue back, or we'll give you something," you wouldn't take a
first-round pick for Tom Barrass, considering we've got Harry Edwards coming through. Yeah, you would look at that. Of course you would. But I just wanted to make the point that some of these guys, let's not forget that they're hard to find key position players who are proven and delivering and won premierships. A lot of people have thrown, when they got frustrated this season, trade Darling, I've seen on Twitter, trade McGovern, trade Barrass. Like, just cool your jets a bit. These players don't just grow on trees, right? There are a lot of clubs that have invested in key position talents through the draft who have amounted to not much. Yep. 4-time All-Australians like McGovern are hard to find. Guys who stand up in grand finals like Barrass are hard to find. Jack Darlings, they are not easy players to develop in the AFL game. So you got to take that into account as well. I guess that's my point.
I'm totally with you. If would you trade Darling for Walters?
No, I wouldn't. I think Walters had a quiet season.
Yeah, I think he's past his best. I think that the relationship between Longmuir and Walters has soured.
Yeah, interesting. No, I wouldn't be trading Jack Darling. I think he can bounce back and have a brilliant season. I do. I think he had a down second half of the campaign along with everyone else. I think when we sort our shit out, I think Jack Darling will rise with it. I think he's got a lot to offer still.
West Coast and Freo need to reach an agreement where Darling just plays at Optus Stadium because he hates being away from his family so much that he just plays home games, and we just get him for half the year. Freo get him for half the year, and we'll pay slightly more of his salary, so we get him for finals. I think that's the best agreement we can come to.
Nice.
So trade bait we've discussed. Is there anyone outside of Nelson, Petruccelli, Brander, and Gaff who you see as legitimate trade bait?
Not really. No, I don't see anyone else being thrown up as an option or having currency. So you're looking at guys like Ainsworth, Archie, Vardy. They're not going to have currency for other clubs. So, no, I think those are the only players that would legitimately be mentioned in discussions. I think I threw up Jack Redden as a smoky, but I think he played well enough for us towards the end that he stays. No. Those are the players for me. For you?
Yeah, look, I'm slightly more open-minded, but only if West Coast are committed to trying to get young players in. I don't think they're that desperate. I think they're very happy to have the first round pick, which they have to use anyway. And then, they'll use that wherever it ends up, whatever they can engineer, whether it's pick 5 to pick 12 or whatever they do. I mean, if they were willing to trade in like Quinton Narkle or something, and that shifts them back a couple of picks, or whatever, or if it is Jordan Clark and they go back from 10 to 16 because Geelong are obviously going to be there at the pointy end. Like if we gave Geelong a future second rounder, we swapped third round picks and then swapped first round picks, and we got Jordan Clark, like, would you be happy with that? Clark, and then we end up with pick 17.
Yeah.
So that might work. That might work well for Geelong, who have traded away their first round picks to get Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out. Yeah, there's so many of these little things that teams can do now to try and they slide picks around and draft points and all that crap. But the idea of sliding our first round pick forward and back needs to be entertained, because if we can get in either a better prospect or a sort of a 20 or 21-year-old who's ready to be plugged in straight away, I think that's something that should be considered, especially if they think they're going to try and win a flag again. Delisting candidates from Lee, I think we've sort of discussed this already. It's pretty hard to see Bubba on the list next year. Probably not Archie. Is there anyone else?
Vardy, I've got moving on as well, because I think, Bailey Williams has emerged as a good second ruck option. And I think Callum Jamison as a youngster comes through. I just don't see us giving Vardy another year. Maybe we go for another backup ruckman potentially, but I think it's probably time for Vards to part ways, you would think. Jared Cameron, where's he at? He could be gone, which would be a shame because he's got a lot of talent, a lot of excitement. He just seems to have dropped off the face of the Eagles' earth, unfortunately.
Well, he's just been
someone who goes.
Injuries just destroyed his last 2 years.
I know. I just wonder if
Brisbane offer a second rounder or something for him.
I'd like him to stay if they feel as though the motivation's there. There's talent, so I'd like us to keep Jared Cameron. Maybe he gets rookie listed or something like that. Maybe was he on the rookie list this year? I don't know. I don't think he was. Maybe he gets rookie listed next year to work his way back. He looks like he might be in a bit of a precarious position. Other than that, we discussed Mark Hutchings. He's only 30. I think I'd be happy for him to have a 1-year contract from here on in. Jermaine Jones, is he in a tricky spot potentially? Maybe. I still think JJ's got a lot to offer. I'd like him to be kept on the list. So I think the players I've mentioned, Ainsworth, Archie, Vardy, are the three that stand out. There's probably another one that goes with it.
I think with Archie probably going, that means that Jermaine Jones. I think that there's still a bit to be explored with him.
I really like him.
I like his versatility and his toughness. I just think, but he just needs to probably play a little bit more. He needs to be more influential in whatever position we end up picking him.
Yeah.
I need to see just a little bit more. But he's had moments. Yeah. So I think, he's had a good season. So Ashley Little, how do we make sure Petruccelli doesn't play for West Coast again? Obviously a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Would you be happy to see Petruccelli given another big chance to perform next season?
I'd be happy for him to be explored as a trade option as well. Let's see what's out there. Yeah, and if there's nothing forthcoming that satisfies us, well, we keep him on the list because he's got a ability. But you kind of say to him start of the season, I think it's not good enough averaging under around 10 possessions a game. Like, he's the small forward version of Mitch McGovern. Doesn't matter how much talent you've got. If you can't get enough of the ball, you are not going to impact games. And if you're not getting enough of the ball, then you're going to be chasing and tackling like Jamie Cripps does when he's not getting a lot of it. He works hard to influence the game in other ways. Jack Petrocelli doesn't. So it'd be like, hammer down. If you're not going to lift your output, this is your last season at the club. Like, as simple as that. So I think they can explore trade options for him. It would not surprise me at all if they do. I think they probably will. I think they're very frustrated with him. But if they can't find anything, well, it's hammer down. You don't lift your output, you don't have the future of the club.
So give me a yes or no answer on these. So could Petrocelli be retrained as a halfback?
I think more of a wing. I'm not sure about halfback. I'd be worried about him being
I just think
accountable. So I'd say no, considering the players we have in those positions. Yeah.
So I just think it's just whatever is happening right now is just not working. He played one good game against St Kilda. He played good for 2.5 quarters. So let's use this preseason, train him in a different position. And if it still doesn't work, then see you later. Or otherwise, it's just traded, full stop. But if he rocked up for day one of preseason in season 2022, then I think you got to try something different because whatever they're doing isn't working. So that would be my option. Candice asked about the leadership group. Personally, I wouldn't mind Nick taking over the captaincy for 1 to 2 years until Oscar Allen is ready. I'd also like to see Oscar, Duggo, and maybe even Barras in the leadership group with Nick as the main man. I think it needs a major change. Shuey and Gov hasn't worked.
I would like to see Nick Natanui made a co-captain with Luke Shuey for next season.
Yep, I agree. I think that's a good move.
He should be elevated to co-captain with Luke Shuey.
I don't think that, and while that is a drastic decision, I just think it makes so much sense.
Yeah. He deserves it. Basically, you carried us, you led for us this season. Luke, you're a little bit older. We're putting Nick up there with you. I think Luke would be fine with that. No worries. He deserves it.
And I think that Luke and Adam they seem like they have an extremely close relationship.
Yeah.
And so sit down and have an honest conversation. So, Luke, you're an absolute superstar player when you're up and running. And you're very important to what we do here and for the culture of the club and all that sort of stuff. Everyone loves you, but right now there's no guarantee that you're actually out in the park.
Yeah.
And Nick has shown another side to his play. He's not just the inspirational ruckman, he's now inspirational leader. So I think that needs to be rewarded. So you wouldn't be in favour of a straight swap?
Co-captains.
So you think co-captains is the only option, or does Nick go one out?
I think that's unfair on Luke Shuey considering how much footy he's missed. I think that would be harsh on him. He was given it on merit. I don't think you need to make such a dramatic change that can potentially rock the boat to that extent, where you put such an important player and devoted player at the club offside by demoting him when it's injuries that have got the better of him. So I don't think you lose. I think you lose more by doing that than you could potentially gain. And I don't think you lose much at all by putting Nick as co-captain.
It's a ballsy move. No matter what, the discussion apparently between Simon Goodwin and Nathan Jones on the golf course when Jones became co-captain with Jack Viney apparently was horrible. And then Viney, he couldn't cut it either. And then he literally swaps with Gawn and then stays vice captain. And then it's worked out, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But
look at GWS. I mean, the Cornelio move hasn't paid off. Now, I don't know what happened there, whether Cornelio demanded it in his contract or not. I'm not sure. But whatever the case, it hasn't worked. They don't seem, the whole club doesn't seem completely happy with what happened there. That seems obvious for whatever reason. So it can be a tricky situation. So I don't think you need to rock the boat that much. But I think if you put Nick co-captain, everyone's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's being West Coast captain, to me, it has almost never seemed like there's been a controversial moment other than Cousins having to hand it back because of what happened.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, isn't it? So, Glass and Hearn were great decisions. amazing decisions for the culture of the club and the direction. You know, when Glass got that captaincy, he set us up for basically an assault on the premiership.
Yeah.
And then we won a flag out of it when Hearn was captain. So, yeah, decisions, they're massive going forward.
What I will say is, I think one of the youngsters needs to be put up in the leadership group, Oscar Allen or Liam Duggan, just to, again, mix things up a little bit, put some of the older players on notice. Oscar Allen's a vice captain now. Liam Duggan's a vice captain. You know, the things are changing a little bit. Don't get too comfortable. Yeah. Just for that sort of mix to change, that dynamic.
So Sam Phillips says, how are you guys treating Bung and JK? 2 months ago, I had them both playing on. 1 month ago, I was tapping JK on the shoulder. Now I'm tapping both. I love them, but I feel it's a big step into turning a corner.
Yeah, I'm keeping Shannon Hearn. I think he played some really good footy. The injuries are a worry, yes. But it'd feel way too early to tap him now. JK's the worry. I just worry if we know how good he can still be when he's up and going. It's just team balance at the moment. That's the concern. We just seem to be too tall, and it might be time to change things up. And he's got 1 year left guaranteed. He's not going to play beyond next season if he plays next season. So, yeah, that one seems a 50-50, and I don't think I would be devastated. I'd be devastated to see him go, but I wouldn't take umbrage with the decision if he was moved on. Shannon Hearn, I would, unless he decides to retire himself.
Yeah, I'm just so torn on this, and it's so hard for us to comment because we don't know the mental state of the players. Like, I wouldn't be against Shannon Hearn doing what Shane Mumford has done. So Shane Mumford's the ruck coach, right, for GWS, and he wasn't necessarily planning on playing much footy this season. He's ended up playing a lot more because of injuries and whatnot. Like, what if Hearn took on a coaching role and he was available for selection on the list, but not necessarily guaranteed to play each week? Like, what would that work?
I'd have Shannon Hearn still a key part of the team.
Yeah. So what about doing that with Kennedy then? He's on the list, but he's also a coach.
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me. He's got to stay, because we saw when he had breaks this year and he played at home, he played really well. So that would work. And then maybe he just plays home games. And if the body stands up a little bit like Buddy this season, all right, we can take him away for this game or that game. Yeah, maybe. Complete luxury player. That would be okay. I wouldn't have an issue with that.
And like, it's not meant to be an insult against Josh Kennedy that he can't play a full season of good footy. And we don't want him a situation where he's languishing in the twos and like getting beaten by 80 points playing in the waffle team when it's like completely depleted. That's not the situation we want. So if you give him something else, like you're looking after our key forwards, you're our key forward coach, and you work with them on their movement and their marking. You work with the young ruckman, with Cal Jameson, so he can learn how to play forward when he's not in the ruck. Work with Bailey Williams, get his craft going, and then it's like, oh, geez, we've got 3 home games in a row because we're playing a derby. It's like, let's plug in JK for a couple of games. Let's give Oscar a rest, or let's give Darling a rest for this away game. Let's take Josh to the MCG, and Darling can stay home and have a week off with his family. Yeah. We're trying to win a flag, aren't we? Like, we're all in next year. We may as well be. I know we're going to change things around and probably young players are coming in, but that's part of what hopefully will make us better. So exactly, take Josh Kennedy for the ride if he's all in on this new situation. But for team balance and stuff, I'm just finding it hard to imagine how it's not helping us in the short term because we can't keep the ball inside 50. It's not helping us in the long term either because we're not developing the right players. So I think something needs to be tweaked. It's just a question of how you do it.
Well said.
On-field leadership again. Tom Carullo talking about this. He's kind of
answered all those questions.
Yeah, he's hit on a few things that we've already discussed.
Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy's good. He's got some good ideas. He's saying, is it easy as better preseason and we'll be right, or are we on a decline here? And should we expect to lose more games next year?
I don't think anyone really knows. I don't think Adam Simpson really knows at the moment. I think he knows he needs to change things. And I think he knows that if he does, things can still work out. We've still got talent there. But so much of it depends on what changes can be made and how some players respond. How does Andrew Gaff come back if he stays? How does Dom Sheed come back if he stays? How does Jack Darling play second half of the season after a break? Does Luke Shuey, Liam Ryan, Shannon Hearn, Elliot Yeo, do they overcome all their injury problems? If that all happens, then yeah, of course we can. We don't know if they definitely will. So there's so much uncertainty. I don't think we're full rebuild. I really don't think we are. I don't think we definitely will be right. We're going to challenge for the flag either. It feels as if it can go either way. It feels so much like the end of 2017. Thankfully, that went to the summit of the AFL in 2018 and we won the flag. I really don't know as a fan.
Yeah, it's hard. I just think that the club will feel like we've committed to challenging for a flag, so that's where we are. And that means that you're setting yourself up potentially for failure. If West Coast, like, it's almost impossible for them to decide they're in a rebuild right now because they haven't got any room to maneuver on the list. So I just don't think they have a choice. So yes, next season could be a massive failure.
Yeah.
We might not get the game plan right. Our older players might play shit and we come 14th. That could happen. Yeah. But then at least we know where we are.
Yeah, correct. We need to change things up, that's for sure, as we've discussed, strategically and on the list a little bit. That we need to do. And if we change the mentality and players have the win put up them, then maybe they come out with a different attitude and approach next season, more hunger, and we give it a good crack again.
Yeah. It's not just about having a better preseason. It's about it being different and implementing new things. So that's where it's at. Kylie Perry, like this question, is Neil Erasmus our number one draft target, and how do we ensure he's there at our pick, which is probably not going to be 10, given there's at least two father-sons with Dacos and Darcy. I always think with this, it doesn't affect us only just the number, because Darcy and Dacos almost don't count. Like, they'll never come into our football club. So they're not counted in the 10 players that we're looking at pick 10. But so Erasmus looks like he's just did a bit of reading earlier. He looks like the number one sort of WA youngster. I mean, aren't Fremantle going to be like one or two picks ahead of us? So they probably take him. Like, it's that simple. Yeah,
and they could well have pick 6 from Carlton as well. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're right.
But I'm not as massive on WA players as others. Like, yeah, if he's the best player available, then great. But I know what's happened with Adam Chera. I know what's happened with other players before, and we've benefited from it too. You've got to pick the best available and back yourself to keep them. And we've got a very good record of keeping them. Even if it's not for the entirety of their career, if it's for 6 years, great. If there's a 50-50 call, you cannot split two players. Well, then, okay, you go with the home option. Fine. But you never draft an inferior player because they come from WA. That is just making you an inferior football club. Pick the best available. I'm not bothered about states. And if they end up leaving and we've done everything we can to keep them, so be it. And we get compensation through the trades.
Yeah, I'm with you. And given that I haven't watched Neil Erasmus play one game of football, it's pretty hard for me to comment on exactly where he's at.
Yeah.
But you can be guaranteed that, you know, the list and recruitment gurus, they know where he should fall. And if they really want him bad enough, then they'll make a trade happen somehow, or they'll slide back, whatever's necessary. But it's never been easier to move up and down the draft board. So West Coast, we can be pretty safe in the knowledge that then they're going to nail whatever pick they get. And they know exactly what they're looking at. Like, they're playing out all these scenarios, so they understand where it's at. But Fremantle at the moment are a pretty big barrier to us in the draft right now. They're going to probably have 2 picks ahead of us, and they might even turn, like, Fremantle could turn that into pick 2. Like, do you think GWS need pick 2? Hell no.
Yeah.
Like, that number 2 pick is up for grabs. Fremantle with pick 6 and 8 or whatever they'll have. They're a big player to move up. Shane Beaton, is our premiership window still open? Can we turn it around? I think we've answered that one. Jack Redden J.K. Hearn to go on in 2022, question mark. I think, Redden's a certainty.
Yeah, it's from Mitchell Swan. Yep.
Yeah, and then we'll see what J.K. and Hearn do. Mitchell Swan, do we go after Sam Petrevski-Seton and Jordan Clark? Clearly, we're both all in on Jordan Clark. Petrevski-Seton, I don't hate as a bargain sort of pickup because his stock seems to have fallen so far, and it's obviously not working at Carlton. It's his situation at Carlton is fucked. Like, they played him out of position. Like, where do we play Sam Petrevski-Seton if we recruit him?
I mean, I'm not that. If he came to the Eagles, I wouldn't be excited. I'd be all right if he delivers on his potential. We find a spot for him, could work out. I wouldn't be excited by it. I mean, he's linked to the Dockers now because of the Chera deal. Apparently, reading reports, they're lukewarm on the idea. You couldn't break into Carlton's team, who missed the finals by a long way. Does he really offer us that much? Yes, he's got talent, but playing off half-back, we don't really need him there. Does he have the engine to play on a wing and through the midfield? I'm not sure. Is he going to offer us much up forward where we've got some players in those positions? Maybe. I'm not that excited by it, unless you get him for an absolute bargain, as you said.
I think he's an inside midfielder. I think that's his position. When he first got drafted to Carlton, that's where he played. They actually played him in position early days, and that's where he looked okay. Would you rather Petrevski-Seton or Quinton Narkle?
I would probably Petrevski-Seton over Narkle. I think he's got a bit more upside. Jordan Clark would be my pick of all three, but Petrevski-Seton, over Narkle. I think he's got a bit more to offer if you can get the best out of him. You?
I just think I'm open to having either of those players on the list, but you just have no more of this playing out of position. Like, it's pointless.
Yeah. Like,
if Petrevski-Seton, if he was going to become a good half forward or half back, it would have happened. So he's either a midfielder or he's not. Yeah. So let's not fuck around playing him out of position. So anyway, that's my view on it. If they can see a role for him and they want to give him a crack, it'd almost be better if we knew that we were going to rebuild. Like a year down the track, that's when you'd want Petrevski-Seton because, all right, well, let's just play him in the midfield. Like, Redden's going to retire. But we're not in that position yet, so maybe it's not the best fit. Aaron says, what are our most pressing positional needs? And out of the box / lesser known players we could target to fill these positives. So what's our most pressing positional need? I mean, it's probably obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pace for the midfield. It's the wing. At the start of the season, we discussed the wings, didn't we? Has that been fixed? I don't think so. So we need players who can run flanks a lot better and then give us some pace on ball as well. Who are the players that can fill those positions? I mean, I'd like to see Xavier O'Neill get a bit more footy. I'm not sure he's the answer, but I'd like to see him given a bit more of a chance. Jared Brander, we've discussed ad nauseum. Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't. Connor West look like he's an option. Does Zane True step in next season? Promising signs as a rookie in the waffle. Can he step up and deliver? Maybe. Isaiah Winder, can he give us some of that pace that we crave? Can Jack Petrocelli move into another position? These are all things that we've discussed, but there's no one really standing out, are there? There's no one that really stands up and goes, yeah, that's the way to play it. If Liam Ryan lifts his tank, maybe he plays more in the midfield. I think we've seen him go through there and give us a lift there, but not sure he has the energy to do so. Like a Jake Stringer type, you can burst forward and then also go, and play deep in the square as well. Few options there, but nothing really jumps out at you.
Well, the biggest gap on our list is that we don't have like an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old gun young mid. That's exactly. That's the one, and almost no one has them. Like, if you're at the top of the ladder, you don't have that player. Yeah. So, and that's
Daniel Venables was our player.
Yeah,
he would have been the one.
He was Luke Shuey 2.0.
Yeah.
So
and we do need to find something like that in the draft.
The more you think about it, the more heartbreaking it is that it happened the way it happened.
Yeah,
he's literally the player that we need, and we can't. And he's been on 100%. The list. We can't have him, and his life's, been thrown into turmoil. Anyway, we've been over this. So, West, that's why I keep saying if we could move up the draft order, our biggest hole in our list is a promising young midfielder who we don't have to give. We don't have to give him the keys, but he's there developing. He's working with Shuey and Kelly every day. He looks at Jack Redden and goes, "Geez, if I work bloody hard, at least I know I'll be a B grade midfielder my whole career. And if I can make the most of my potential, I can be Luke Shuey. I can win a North medal." So if there's any way we can turn pick 10 into pick 4 and get one, that would be best case scenario. I've come to the end of the list. So that's all the questions. So thanks so much for contributing and generating some conversation. It's
great. Fantastic. We solved our leadership issues, and we showed how pressing some of the other issues are because we couldn't give specific answers to them. It's going to be one hell of an off season. I'm really excited for it. I'm already looking forward to the draft, looking forward to the trade period to see what we do to mix things up.
I'm with you. It's disappointment can create excitement down the line to work out how you're going to solve these problems. And I've full faith that Adam Simpson can do it. And the club hierarchy, like Nizzy, he's been down this road before. He understands exactly what we're going through. He's going to be a calm and cool head behind the scenes, and Simo's revitalised the list. And we've gone from outside of the 8 to a grand final. We've gone from a semi-final but pretty disappointing to grand finalists when we were tipped to win the spoon. So the club has come from these positions to be successful before. So there's reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah. And look, we've laughed at other clubs in the past when they've been talking about trades and the draft during finals. Look at you guys. That's what you're obsessing with now. We're playing in September. The shoe's on the other foot now. It's not the ideal way, but hey, that's the approach that we have to take right now. And we're excited about that. We'll watch the finals. We'll love them. But we're looking ahead to see what the club does in the off season. It's going to be exciting. And it's mainly the attitude. I'm keen to see which players come back with a new approach. Those that are lucky enough to stay on the list for the start of next season.
Who's your tip for the flag? You're Port, aren't you?
Yeah, I like the value of Port. I'm probably still with the Cats. Big news today that Mitch Duncan's back for the first game of the finals. So I'm probably still with the Cats. Melbourne have, obviously definitely changed things. I think Port have got a big home advantage. So Geelong first, Port second, Melbourne third for me. You?
I'm on Melbourne.
Okay.
But what do I know? I thought the Dogs were going to win it. So, I mean, things can change. Melbourne, it looks like, have just the brand that just stands up.
Yeah.
Rain, hail, or shine.
As close as it is, I think 3 have separated. Geelong, Port, Melbourne have separated from the rest, as close as it still is. They're the best 3 options.
Agree. All right, Garby, it's been fun.
It's been fun, mate. Let's hope Nick Nat gets that All-Australian blazer tomorrow night. That'd be wonderful to put a smile on our faces again after a disappointing season. Really enjoyed that podcast. Thanks to everyone. We'll have a few more special episodes coming up before we sign off for the year. Thanks for everything.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.